Well, I'm Nadine Dereza. I'm actually a business journalist and presenter by profession. And today I was asked to chair the RTS Women in Comedy panel. Female comedians have always had a tougher time over the years. When I've been to comedy venues, whenever a female comes on stage, traditionally, men have thought, oh yeah, are you going to make me laugh? And have had to work harder and harder. But with the likes of French and Saunders, Miranda Hart, and some brilliant directors, Sharon Horgan, coming through now into the mainstream, I think the attitudes are changing, and I think men are also relaxing now that women can be funny. Who would have thought it, eh?
I'm Lynne Parker, and I'm the founder and chief executive of Funny Women. I've been running Funny Women for 14 years, and we're all about women in comedy. Our whole essence is about encouraging women into comedy through our Funny Women Awards, through our workshops, and through our coaching and training. When we first started Funny Women in 2003, a lot of people laughed at me and said, why on earth would you have a competition just for female comedians? And indeed, the first year we only had 70 women enter. And this year, which we've just finished, we closed the books on over 500 entrants.
I'm Harriet Braine, and I'm a relatively new comedian on the scene. I do musical comedy, and I sort of started around January this year performing in London. I've come here today from Greenwich, which is where I work, in the National Maritime Museum. There's been no sense, at least in my year of comedy, that women are like being left behind or we haven't got as much of a voice. I have personally found that I don't have much of a difference in response from men or women. So I aim it at kind of people who are like me and sort of like cultural sponges, and they can be any gender and they are the ones that respond to me. And I've not had any like especially negative, you can't do that, you can't do this, you know, nothing like that.
I'm Sophie Taitt. I'm head of production at the BBC Comedy. But I think people just want to be entertained. If you're going to a club where you want to heckle and you're going to pick faults at anybody who appears regardless of their gender, then that's going to be a tough ride for anybody, whether they're male or female. But I think by and large, just like producers want to read great scripts, find good stories, audiences want to be entertained.
I think, again, the landscape has changed in terms of how women are perceived. So women were often compartmentalised, that they couldn't seem to be having an affair, they couldn't seem to be risky or brash. And there definitely is an understanding that women can be like men, can have the same concerns, the same worries, and similar style voices as well. So some of the popular programmes like Psycho Bitches has tapped in to that genre where it's okay to have, a brash point of view, to have fun. You don't necessarily have to write for a specific targeted audience because it might be too niche. Although some commissioners are looking for niche products as well. But I think the key message was, don't get bogged down in that. Have great characters that are authentic and that represent real people.
I think people are bringing more authentic, rounded stories. It's a female perspective, but it's not the female perspective. It's a funny story, it's a situation that you might find yourself in that you can identify with as a woman, but also as a man enjoying a interesting, funny story. So I don't think it's that the perspective has shifted at the top, but it's more just that we're getting a broader range of stories in and people feel comfortable telling them.
I'm not visibly scared of doing something a bit different, and it's down to, I think it's probably down to just bigger names in comedy like Amy Schumer as the big one at the moment.
What you're seeing now is all those women who started out when the alternative scene started 30 years ago. They're now the writers and the sort of ambassadors for female comedy, and all the younger women are able to follow in their footsteps, and they've got great examples to aspire to. The truth is they've always been there, we're just probably more aware of them.
I think the biggest change recently is that the world is shrinking. The big platforms that are global in nature, whether it's Amazon, Netflix, Hulu, they are not bothered where the performer comes from, whether they're male, female, as long as they are telling a interesting, entertaining story that's going to attract their global audience.
You're finding now that a lot of the creative teams are run by women, so that naturally would gravitate to more women getting involved in all stages of the comedy production. So I see a really bright future as long as those mentoring, shadowing schemes take place and people know how to get into the industry, so it's not a class system anymore like it used to be.
What I do find exciting is the way women are challenging the boundaries far more. And I think what happens, it's cyclical, and I think the men sort of back off and then they start to come forward. And I have to say, male comedians have always been tremendously supportive of what we do at Funny Women as well. I think they like the scene change. They like the fact that with more women on the scene, they can talk about other things.
Let's look how far we've come rather than be disappointed by where there is still work to be done. Of course, this can't be something that you let nature take its course on. You have to keep pushing and thinking and challenging yourself. Are you telling a story that is representative of the diversity of the country? And I think you can't let that take it for granted.
I think what is telling that in the top 10 comedians of the world, only one is from Britain, it's John Bishop. This is based on 2015 earnings, and there isn't a female in those top 10 rankings. So as much as we're finding it funny and hilarious, there's still a huge amount of work to do. So we've still got a way to go with that, but it definitely is improved.